freedom just begun, living large under the sun.
Hello, and welcome to the SmartMAI Consulting Edge Podcast, where we speak with experienced advisors, consultants, and business leaders about how they solve problems, guide organizations through change, and drive sustainable growth and results. I'm your host, Dan Mulberry. Today's episode is called From Growth to Value: Why Revenue Alone Won't Maximize Your Exit. Business owners naturally focus on revenue growth, but revenue and value are not the same thing. A company can grow sales while still leaking profit. It can have talented employees without a strong management team. It can generate attractive earnings while remaining dangerously dependent on the founder. And it can wait until a few years before a sale to discover that problems ignored for decades are now reducing what a buyer is willing to pay. Our guest today has spent decades helping business owners solve those problems. David Boim is CEO of DSB Management Consultants, where he helps company owners improve revenue, EBITDA, operational performance, management effectiveness, technology, financial discipline, and ultimately enterprise value. Over more than 25 years, David's worked with businesses that have successfully sold at strong valuations, and his philosophy is that exit preparation is not something that begins when an owner is ready to sell. It begins by building a better business today. David's also the founder and host of the International Business Strategy Group, which I'm proud to be a member of, a nationwide peer community of more than 1,600 business leaders built around one of his core beliefs: no one is smarter than all of us. David, welcome to the SmartMAI Consulting Edge.
Hey, thank you, Dan, and thank you for the introduction. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, David, a lot of business owners assume that if they grow revenue, the value of the company just follows. Why is that an incomplete philosophy?
Well, there are several factors when companies want to be acquired or want to exit or want to merge. So what is the value of your company? Revenue is certainly one aspect, but your EBITDA, which is your net profit, that is really important. And most organizations are valued by a multiple of their EBITDA. Another factor is if your company's going to be bought, and very often it's bought by a private equity company. Well, those companies, they want to know, do you have a succession plan? How dependent on the owner? If I'm going to go give you millions of dollars, and you may even have a period of time where you stay with the company, but you're going to change when you get that money. So do you have someone in place that can run the company in your place? Do you have the right management team? Do you have a management team where you as the owner or CEO have to play referee? When they have conflicts, are they able to resolve those conflicts on their own? Are they the right people? And I'm going to give you some examples today of all these things. And let's just go forward. And Dan, if you have some specific questions, otherwise I could story tell all day long.
I have questions that should cover most of that. So the first is, we talked about having to plan several years before an exit strategy. Why should people start planning long before that transaction?
Well, first of all, to run your business and have the best possible business you have, you need to be thinking out of the box. I have a CEO roundtable coming up on September 16th, and it's called, Are You Thinking Too Small? That is the question. Have you actually put an artificial ceiling on the value of your company because you don't know better, or for a variety of reasons? So what do you need to have? Well, first of all, do you have the right financial information? Are you closing your month and within 10 days, you have all your financials, a financial package? You have a 13-week cash flow projection so that shows you where your cash is coming in. These are the kinds of things that when you first get an interest, the first thing in due diligence is they look at your financials. And if your financials are outdated, they're inaccurate, all that does is devalue your company. So one of the things, if you haven't done it, make sure that you have the right financial package and the right planning there. The second thing is, Do you have the right leadership team in place? Do you have the right succession plan in place? Are you maximizing EBITDA? Are you maximizing your net profit? Are you making the right investments in your company? Because I'm going to tell you, companies that know what they're doing, they're going to look at all those aspects of your company. As your company is growing, are you growing because you're dependent on one or two companies? Do you have a marketing engine that generates the requisite number of leads your sales team needs in order to be successful? By the way, those are questions you have to ask just to have a successful company. And of course, having a successful company means your valuation is going to be much higher than if you don't.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. A good exit strategy sounds like it's essentially the same thing as a good business strategy. So
Oh, by the
let's
way,
talk.
do you have a business plan? And it is a real plan. Not, hey, I got a business plan. It's been on the shelf for 3 years.
Mhm.
Is it a living, breathing document? One of the people that I mentor has a fractional CFO company. And at our meeting, Dan, you're a member of this group, the International Business Strategy Group, where people share. He said, I look at my business plan nearly every single day. It's my map to growing my company.
It seems pretty basic, but we don't do it. So that's a great point, I think. So let's focus on EBITDA a little bit. You've recently focused a lot on EBITDA leakage. Tell me what that term means and where does
Sure.
profit typically leak out of a business
And I'm going to
without
give you,
leadership
I'm
recognizing
going to
it?
give you, I'm going to give you a bunch of examples.
Okay.
Okay. So let's talk first of all, what is the cost to your company of attrition? What is your cost of recruiting, hiring, training, mentoring, managing, and evaluating your personnel? And you, by the way, you could put that into AI, that question. And your answer is going to be between 100% and 200% of that person's salary. And by the way, the higher up the ladder they are, the closer it is to the 200%. So companies that have attrition, companies that don't recruit correctly, companies that don't train correctly. Now, let me give you a quick example of that. If you have a good training program, it needs to include testing. Do you have a written test? Are you finding out if your employees, your new employees, are learning what you're teaching? Do you do role playing? If you're not, what are you doing? Waiting 6 months or 8 months or a year to see if they fail? Is that the test? Because I'm going to tell you, that's going to cost you a lot of money. Another example, let's say you're a manufacturing company. We find that most manufacturing companies are leaking between 3 and 5% of the cost of manufacturing. So what does that mean? If you're a $50 million manufacturing company and your cost of manufacturing is $30 million, there's probably someplace about $1 million of inefficiency that is leaking in your company. So if you're a $50 million company and you have $8 million of EBITDA, that's another $1 million. That's 17% more, but it's not a million because if your company's selling at 4 times EBITDA, that $1 million is really $4 million when you go to sell your company. So each year you could have an extra $1 million in your company, and at the end you could have an extra $4 million when you sell your company, and you're totally unaware of it. And I love when owners say, "Oh, my people could figure that out."
Yeah,
One of my slogans is, "What do we know for sure? If they can do it, it'd be done."
exactly. Exactly. Why didn't they do it already if that's the
Yeah, yeah.
case?
They're planning to make you more inefficient. They're planning to make you less productive. Another example is I had someone who bought a machine on the line that could produce twice as many goods as the old machine. Well, there were a few problems. One is they didn't properly train their people how to use this new machine. But secondly, they didn't look at the rest of their line. And the rest of their line did not support that increased production. So they made this capital investment that wasn't paying off. And this machine at this particular company was $1.5 million. It's like lighting it on fire.
Wow.
Now, the real answer is make that investment, Improve the efficiency in your line, train your people. Great example of EBITDA leakage. So we can go through this. And by the way, we have a survey that someone could fill out in literally 2 minutes and identify their own EBITDA leakage. What is the likelihood of their EBITDA leakage, whether you're manufacturing, a software company, a professional services company, a retail organization? It doesn't matter. What are you doing that's ineffective, that's costing your company money? And by the way, decreasing the value of your company.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really interesting tool to have. I'm sure that people will want to take advantage of it. We'll talk about that at the close too.
And
But
it's
I can find
free.
that. So,
So
you talked about the scorecards and accountability materially improving margins. How can something as basic as clarifying what each person's responsible for have such a significant financial effect?
well, the reason is what is the lost time and inefficiencies that are in your organization? And it's really simple. How do you manage people? Are you managing the results? If you have salespeople, are you really waiting to see how they did each month to decide whether they're effective? Have you broken this down into how many proposals do I need to make this number of sales? How many discovery meetings do I need to get these proposals? How many first meetings do I need to have? So if you have a salesperson and you determine they have to have 5 new meetings a month in order for them to make their number, and they're averaging 2, what do we know for sure? They'll never make their number.
Exactly.
Now,
Exactly.
is it their fault, or did you hire the wrong people? Did you train them poorly? Have you set them up for success? So having scorecards at every level, not just the doers, not just the worker bees, but their managers, their directors, the leadership team, and you as a CEO, what is your scorecard? How do you spend your time? And if you're not spending your time strategizing and evangelizing and helping manage your company, what are you doing?
Yeah, I can see how that's going to also help just set expectations and allow people to understand exactly what they're accountable for and
And
hold
you
them
actually
accountable.
increase morale because people know exactly how they're going to be measured. They're going to know, hey, how am I doing? They don't have to wait for a review once or twice a year. They know. And when they have their reviews, it shouldn't be waiting once or twice a year. If someone is not doing well and they're not making, their scorecards are low, you should be talking with them. And by the way, not accusing them. What's the issue? What's preventing you? Maybe they need more training. Maybe they need better management. One of our slogans is never let anyone devalue the work of other employees in the company. Do you have somebody in a position where they're supposed to be doing something and it's not getting done and it impacts the productivity of several other people in your organization and it just goes that way up and down the line? And you want to know why your company's not maximizing its value? The question is, have you set up your company to be successful?
That's great. Well, one of the benefits of AI is its ability to crunch massive amounts of data, and it can be used to do things like identifying anomalies, margin changes, changes in customer profitability, or calculating customer profitability, and on and on. And it can do it almost instantly. Are you seeing AI being applied to expose that EBITDA leakage earlier than the traditional reporting does?
Absolutely. And I'm an old guy. I'm a huge AI advocate. In fact, I actually speak at some universities on how to use AI to monetize social media, for instance. But the real thing about AI is we have these disparate systems within an organization. CRMs, ERPs, accounting systems, HR systems, and they all have repositories of data. How can you use AI to have a layer above those? By the way, with no rip and replace, gather that data, be able to create reports and dashboards for your executive team and your leadership team and your management team. And the really cool thing about AI is it also can give you recommendations to be more efficient. But I'm also going to give you a warning about AI. AI is great at analyzing, if you will, regurgitating information that exists. What it cannot do is think out of the box yet.
Mhm.
I'm going to a conference or a show. Now, AI can give you information to help you prepare for that show based on what it already knows.
Right.
How about thinking bigger? How about thinking out of the box? And Dan, would it be all right if I give one example of that?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Okay, and this is a real company, and folks, you can look it up. The company was National FSI, and it had defined contribution plan software. And I was brought in. I was a turnaround guy, and I can explain that later. But I came in there with one of my associates, and we had the American Bankers Association show in San Francisco, and everybody had these ornate booths. Everybody was in suits. We came up with an idea at that time to have computer-based training for the admins and defined contribution plans because there was huge turnover there. And so we came up with this computer-based training where I didn't have to have an investment of a person, $100,000 a year person. I got this $30,000 a year tool and have 40 people use this tool to get trained. But that's not the point of my story. The point of my story is we came to this conference and we had these really, I don't know if I want to call them ugly, but certainly bright, fluorescent colored sweatshirts. And it was in San Francisco. And if any of you have been in San Francisco in June, it's cold at night.
It
and
is.
People think they're coming to California and it's going to be warm, so they don't dress properly. So we're wearing these fluorescent sweatshirts with a crest that said FSI University on it. And we said, okay, come and see a 5-minute demo of our software. We'll give you a free sweatshirt. I literally had tens, if not hundreds of people in line throughout the show, saw our software. Now, the neat thing is we sold $600,000 worth of software at the show where we made 30% net nut. In other words, half of it becomes pure net profit or EBITDA for the company. So that was really cool. By the end of the show, instead of seeing all these blue and black and brown suits, you saw a sea of FSI University sweatshirts that people were wearing in the exhibit hall. Talk about free publicity.
That's brilliant.
And then the really neat thing about it is SEI out of Philadelphia saw us at the show. We got a letter of intent within 90 days, and we sold the company for a very nice valuation to the people at SEI. And what's really cool about that is a few years later, I was running a CEO roundtable in Philadelphia. Who was there? SEI.
That's amazing.
You talk about a small world, as Stephen Wright would say, but I wouldn't want to paint it.
Well, I want to go back to the scorecards for a second and expand on that. One of your 10 principles of hypergrowth is if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Does that take the scorecard kind of a step further? Employees, what do they need to know about?
Yeah, it's a great article. I like to tell you I made that up, but it was in an article in the Harvard Business Review called The 10 Commandments of Hypergrowth. And one of them is train your people to an inch of their lives. And it is really critical. So again, training without testing is meaningless. So if you're not measuring people's performance in the KPIs that are assigned to them, again, it is, first of all, it's a waste of breath, a waste of time. It should be part of the culture of your company. Oh, by the way, let's go back to the original question. When companies come in to buy your company and they saw the discipline that you have within your organization, it increases the value of the organization. They're buying systems and processes that are in place. I've sold companies, and by the way, 17 of them. I was brought into 17 companies in a 35-year period of time as a turnaround guy. grew these companies, and we could tell stories about that later, and all those companies were sold. And they all had these disciplines and processes and procedures in the company that made them very attractive. And some of the buyers actually took them and they implemented them into the cultures of their own company. Talk about adding extra value.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's focus on management teams a little bit. Obviously, a company can't scale if every decision still runs through the owner. But what is it that distinguishes a management team from just a group of managers that are in the same company? What makes them a team?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, the first thing I'm going to suggest to anybody who may be listening to this podcast is get some help. Get somebody who's not inside the organization, who can work with your leadership team and understand the dynamics of that team and the personalities in that team and coach them up. If any of you played sports, yes, you have some innate athletic ability. How do I get the most out of that person? Well, the same thing is true of your leadership team. How do you get the most out of them? The second thing is going back to never allow one person to devalue the work of other people. If you have a weak link in your leadership team and you can identify it, you have two choices. Train that person and coach them up, or replace that person. Very important that we understand that concept. So you ask yourself questions. Can my leadership team resolve conflict on their own? Are they accomplishing their goals as a team together without my involvement as a CEO? Right? How much time are they taking away from me? Right? Very important stuff. Are they sharing techniques? Are they sharing procedures and processes together? So these are all really critical components. And I do want to give two examples. One of our people does leadership coaching, and this large food distributor out of the Midwest, the CEO of the roundtable said, and her name is Lena. Lena is the light of our organization. She's the guiding light of our organization. Our team is so much more productive and so much more effective. Great story. By the way, they doubled their EBITDA in a 3-year period of time.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big win. But one of my favorite stories is there was somebody who had a software company in Florida. Company was 20 years old, about 13 million, making money. And I met with the owner of the company, said, David, I've scaled this company as far as I can go. And my leadership team knows less than I do. And I'm just treading water for the last 3 or 4 years. And my advice to him was, let's go out and let's hire a new leadership team. Let's go find people who've worked for $50 and $100 million software companies. And there's two ways to get them in. One way is pay them a bunch of money and you have the cash, or pay them less money, but give them some type of equity in the company. Or you can give them equity awards, which is what we ended up doing. So instead of getting shares, as the value of the company got up, they would get a bonus. And I won't go into detail about how that works now. He went to his existing management team and said, you could stay here as directors, but you're going to be reporting. I'm a new VP of sales, new VP of development, new VP of marketing, new VP of operation, a new chief operating officer, new CFO. Some of the people left, some of the people stayed. In 3 years, they went from 13 to $50 million.
Wow.
Sold for $500 million of cash and 10% of the new company. I want to repeat that. It was a $50 million company that sold for $500 million in cash because it was a SaaS company, and the valuations of those companies are multiples of revenue, and they gave them 10 times revenue.
Wow.
That is how important having the right leadership and team in place. And by the way, being a CEO, because when he brought in these people, remember, he said, I don't know how to scale this company any further. I realize I'm at my ceiling. So he learned a lot, listened a lot. He managed those people, but he didn't bring them in to tell them, this is what I want you to do. He brought them in and said, what should we be doing better than we're doing right now? And they killed him.
Sounds like it. That's a great example. Well, let's get a little more philosophical here. One of your hypergrowth principles is stronger than simply embrace change. You say live it. What's the difference between embracing change and living it?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the answer is culture, but let's talk about change. I don't care who you are. People are adverse to change, from the CEO to the person who answers the phone. If you tell them, I want you to do something different, it creates angst, and people resist change. So one part of it is, okay, we're going to try to have a culture that embraces change and rewards people who embrace change. Oh, by the way, and if someone is not capable of embracing change, I call those people former employees. But more important is it needs to become part of your everyday being. It needs to be part. It's not painful. It's I'm living and I understand that I have to change. I have to be a change agent within my company. It has to become part of the culture of my company. We're going to live change. And I'll give you just an example of a small company. I came into a $1.5 million software company, then $1.5 million for 5 years. They had $2 million investment from a venture capital group, and that $2 million from the venture capital group was gone after 2 or 3 years. So the VCs brought me in to run the company, and we changed a lot. First of all, I looked at their software, and their software was old and tired. So what did I know for sure? Dan, if I look at their development team and they had old and tired software, what do you know for sure? I'm putting you on the spot. Can you answer that question?
They're not going to make it. They're not going to survive unless they update their software or change their offering.
Yeah, but the main thing is, if these people were capable of updating and upgrading their software, they would have did it. They would have done it. It'd be done. What do we know for sure? If they could do it, it'd be done.
Exactly.
I jettisoned the 9 developers they had. I replaced them with 6 developers, not to save money because I paid them more money per person. So it was about the same. We rewrote 400,000 lines of code. 900,000 lines of code in 4 months.
Wow.
Totally changed the software, but I'm not done. I looked at their salespeople. The venture group said, hey, we want to be 10 million in 3 years. Well, how many direct salespeople do I have to hire if the direct salesperson does $750,000? Well, it means I have to hire 10, 12, 15 salespeople, and all of them need to make it. Well, that's not going to happen. So it means they have to have 20. Well, that wasn't possible. So I changed how we sold our software from selling direct to selling through a channel. And we recruited 150 channel partners. It was the 80-20 rule. 30 of them did 80% of our revenue. We updated our marketing because we knew we had to be the marketing engine behind our new channel. We went from 1.5 to 5 million the first year. Remember, they were a $1.5 million company after 10 years of business. The next year we did 5 million. The next year we did 15 million, and that company was sold to another company for $25 million.
Wow, another amazing example. So, David, sometimes there are legitimate reasons to push back on change or some aspect of a change that's being implemented. How do you distinguish between that healthy resistance that identifies a legitimate risk and resistance that's just fear of change or the...
Well, first of all, it's the 80-20 rule. 80% is fear of change. But did you do your homework? Did you do your research? Is this just a gut feel? Or do we understand what's going on in the marketplace? So years ago, I was working with a $100 million technology company. They sold IBM and NetApp and Microsoft, and they sold solutions to their customers. And we had an exercise that we went through at the beginning of or the end of every year, and that's we got our leadership team together and we have a brainstorming session, which means every idea is okay. By the way, that was the culture we developed. And we had a whiteboard. We wrote everybody's ideas up on the board. And there were 20. They said, okay, we could do 3 or 4 of these next year. We're going to vote. Everybody gets 4 votes. And we went through and we identified the top 3 or 4. Going in and being in the cloud was number 15.
Really?
Because nobody, it was, we're talking, I don't know, 2011, 12, someplace around there. And we played the CEO card. We said, hey, this is great. Thank you. But one of these is going to be, we are going to become cloud experts. And we got a lot of pushback from the management team. But then we educated them. I said, here's the market research. Here's where we think the technology is going. And that's what we did. But it wasn't haphazard. We were prepared and we trained our executive team, whether it was whether it was a COO or a CFO, the head of customer service. Where is the market going? Because that, by the way, is one of the roles of a CEO. That CEO, he or she is the visionary of the company. And sometimes you have to go back and sell that vision to your company, but as a CEO, it's the right thing to do. It's like saying to someone today, I'm not embracing AI. Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah, we have to. And if you really have a moral or some type of business or political reason that you don't want to embrace AI, have a great time at your next gig.
Exactly. Well, that brings up another unusual leadership challenge because the AI technology is changing faster than most organizations can change their processes. So how does a CEO balance that urgency of taking advantage of AI with making it disciplined implementations?
See, this is delegation. I got a management team. I got a leadership team. First of all, I'm educating them, not personally. I'm bringing people in. I may send them blogs or articles. I may do some research, say, here's where our competition is doing. Here's where it's going. And then I'm going to say, I want you, head of HR. I want you, finance. I want you, sales. I want you, marketing. I want you, operations. I want you looking and see how can AI improve my organization? Because that should be part of the culture of your company. How do I improve my organization? And by the way, AI is one tool. How do we become more efficient? Is that part of your culture? Or is your culture one where, hey, we have to run 100 miles an hour just to keep up doing our jobs? Because let me tell you, tough road to hoe. Low morale, high turnover, low productivity, low efficiency. So the answer to your question, Dan, is really a level up. It's not just about AI. It's how do I get my leadership team to be advocates of change? How do I get them to be spending some time learning what's going on in the marketplace? If we have a competitor that's doing something better than we are, let's find out what it is and steal it, right? What do they say? Plagiarism is one of the greatest forms of flattery, right? Which is another thing. We don't have to think of every idea.
Right.
Okay? We just want to implement those ideas better than anybody else.
Well, you have another principle that is similar to what you just said about AI, and it's frankly pretty blunt, but I think accurate. If you do not believe in marketing, adios. Why do otherwise sophisticated CEOs still treat marketing as an expense item rather than a growth engine?
Well, that may be a weakness that they have. And by the way, as a CEO, when I was CEO of a company, I tried to surround my people with people who knew more than I did about specific subjects. And marketing is one of my strengths, but I still had VPs of marketing. And, they were delegated. So, you need to delegate those responsibilities into your leadership team. So I don't know, does that answer your question? You have a follow-up on that?
I think so. So I've got so many questions for you, but I don't want this to run too long. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here. Let's talk about the due diligence that buyers conduct when they're looking to acquire a company. What weaknesses tend to reduce that valuation most quickly?
Okay. Number one, your financial package is not up to snuff. And very often, that's the end of due diligence. Because if they can't trust your numbers, nothing else really matters. Unless you have something really, really unique in your organization, some true differentiator that few people have. The second thing is, how strong is your leadership team and your succession plan? All right. Third, do you have the right processes and procedures? How much change do they have to bring in your organization to be effective? And it's so funny. By the way, one of them is the CEOs cannot be drinking their own Kool-Aid. Mm-hmm. When a CEO or owner tells a future potential buyer, well, I got my blood, sweat, and tears, they're not paying for your blood, sweat, and tears. Or you might say, I just had this conversation literally 2 days ago, talking to this company, and we did an initial valuation, which was $60 million. And he says, I want $100 million. I said, that's great, but it's not worth $100 million. Really understand what is the valuation of your company. Now I said to him, would you like help getting your company to $100 million valuation? This person literally told me, I don't need help. I can do it. And we just said, hey, have a good life. That type of arrogance, by the way, saying that to people who might be wanting to buy your company is not what they want to hear.
No, okay? Not at all.
So understand have a really good idea what your company is valued at. And there are people who can come in and do a quick sort of down and dirty valuation just so that it's like a litmus test. But at the end of the day, have your financials in play, have a good leadership team, have the right succession plan, be efficient. As they go through your company and they're saying, hey, this is really efficient. This is great. When we attach this to our other companies, this is going to be a real value add. And don't be the kind of person to say, well, yeah, but this company can be worth $100 million like the other guy. Yeah, that's why they're looking at your company. It can be worth $100 million, but they're not going to pay you what they think it could be worth in 3 years. That's why they're buying your company right now.
Exactly.
Right? And be prepared. Right? And understand, by the way, it's very seldom cash. Very often, the deals are structured depending on your organization. The more efficient you are, the less of an earnout you need. So let's say, my company can be sold for $20 million, but I'm only giving you $5 million up front. And you have to there's an earnout to get the other $15 million. Mm-hmm. A lot of times that never happens. I talked to a guy last week, thought he sold his company. I don't know who the investment banker was that helped him structure the deal, but it was not a good deal because he wasn't getting his cash until the first year was up. Well, the first year went by and the buyer had buyer's remorse and said, now we're out of here.
Oh, wow.
He thought he had sold his company. It was a small company. He thought he was getting $5-6 million. Got nothing. And now he had to restart. And literally, I've been talking to him about what it's going to take to restart the company. And he's not a young guy. The other thing you need to watch out is for family. All right. I talked to a guy, manufacturing company, 3rd generation. He was hoping he'd give it to his son. His son ended up being a meth addict. He couldn't give the company to his son. And he hadn't grown his company in years. And he was ready to retire. What is he going to do? And by the way, just to let you know what he did, had some of my folks come in for about 6 months, looked at his operation, found 4% EBITDA that dropped to the bottom, 4% of his cost that dropped his EBITDA to his bottom line. Well, it was a $5 million company and it added $1.5 million. So it added $6 million of value. He paid $200,000 to get $6 million of value in a year. Cool.
So, speaking of timelines, what can an owner realistically fix when you walk in and identify things that can be improved to help that valuation? Can they realistically fix things in 2 to 3 years?
Oh, yeah. In fact, they should be implementing and executing that change within months. But they have to agree to it. And I had an organization in Canada, the ARR on their software, annual recurring revenue, was 4.5 million. In 8 months, we went from 4.5 million to $8 million of annual recurring revenue. But I couldn't get the guy out of the structure he had in the company and the financial structure he had in the company. Now, it turned out, CEOs, if this is you, listen to me here. He was using the company as like it's a personal piggy bank. So it helped build an addition to his house. It helped them buy a boat. It helped them build a concrete dock. And he had investors in his company.
Wow.
Well, yeah, now sometimes those are ad backs that can help you when you sell your company. But when they're doing their due diligence, they go, what else is the guy hiding? Don't do that. I'm just telling you, don't do that. You may think you're smart and you're saving too much, a lot of money on taxes. You're not. Because if you plan on selling your company, you're devaluing your company and also making it less likely your company will even be bought. Excuse my language, that sucks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So one last question on the valuation. Are buyers looking more now at technology debt, cyber risk, data quality, and AI governance as part of that valuation? And can that become a due diligence problem?
It depends on what you're doing, right? I'm the $100 million food distributor. They're looking for efficiencies there. Yeah. Are there AI tools and things like that? Yeah. But they are also looking, and if you want to talk about governance, it's not so much governance, it's security. Are you technically secure? And I don't mean, gosh, we have some technology stuff. Are your people trained? Do they know not to click on certain links? Is your company vulnerable to being hacked? True story, 2 years ago. Now, the woman called me after the fact, but she had a $6 million software company. The way this happened was a company said, hey, we're looking to buy your company. And they started to do their due diligence, and they sent the CFO some information. You had to click on a link. It wasn't a real company.
Oh, no.
It was the bad guys. And what they did is they used this as a guise, the GUISE, to get into the company. They encrypted all of her data in her records, including her customer records. And they even knew how much money she had in the bank. And they said, hey, it's going to cost you $250,000 for us to unencrypt this. Yeah. And she paid them. And this is when she came to me. She came, and then they just disappeared. They took the money and never unencrypted the data. And she said, can you help me? I'm sad to say the answer was no. Yeah. And it's what I call, you don't want to be in the swirl. Dan, you know what the swirl is?
It sounds like a toilet.
Yes, when you flush the toilet, there's no stopping the swirl. Yeah. She was in the swirl. All right. And Jesus, we ain't. We're not raising people from the dead.
Wow. Yeah, that's people have to be more careful than ever.
She had 10 years invested in this company, and she lost her company.
Wow. Hey, I want to close out with just a couple quick questions about the International Business Strategy Group. So what have you learned from bringing hundreds of CEOs and advisors into candid conversations about their business? I know you teach a lot when you have those sessions, but what have you learned from them?
But I learn a lot. First of all, one of my slogans is, no one is as smart as all of us. So the first Tuesday of every month, we have what's called the group meeting, and we'll have 50 CEOs, 30 of them are regulars, and then we have new people come in. And they share what's going on. So we may share, what are we doing for marketing? What are you doing for finance? What AI tools? That's a big conversation are you using? And it's great because and by the way, not only do we learn from each other, we have companies that find out, we collaborate together. They work
That's
on
great.
clients together. They're growing together. Our next one, which is September 1st, are you thinking too small? And I have people, they're going to talk about, hey, I came in, I was a solopreneur, started thinking bigger. Now I'm a $2 million company, or I was a $2 million company, and now I'm a $10 million company. Really great stories. And the last one we had, which was on
The challenger.
the challenger, the comments made was, this is the best session we ever had. Learning to be a challenger and selling, which we're not going to go through here today. They
It's a
just
great
found it
concept, though.
intriguing. And were you
Yeah,
on that call, Dan?
I was.
Yeah.
I was.
So, and I'm old and I forget, and I don't take attendance, right? This is the kind of thing is, hey, if you come, you're going to benefit. If you don't come, you're lost.
Right.
And we do record them. And I have people like, I had a customer meeting. They'll watch them. I'll get comments back from people. And it's free. So if you go to Meetup International Business Strategy Group, you can sign in and join for free. And we have companies that are solopreneurs, and we have companies that are large companies that are members of this. It's pretty cool.
So, David, I know you don't give everything away, but you do have a number of one-on-one conversations with CEOs, and you do a lot of mentoring without charging for it. Why is that giving back such an important part of how you operate?
I do 30 to 40, usually around 35 or 36 one-on-ones with CEOs every week, and I do it for free. And part of it is growing up for where I grew up and accomplishing what I've been fortunate enough to accomplish. I believe in giving back to the community. I believe that's a role all of us should have. As we do well, we should be paying it forward. And the other thing we do is, we give money to charity. My charity happens to be St. Jude. I have a daughter who is a cancer survivor. And so that's very meaningful to me. My dad died of cancer. So that's our charity. But it keeps me busy. I think people get a lot of value because they keep coming back for more. And it's great to watch their success and to challenge them to be more than they are today.
Well, David, that's very inspiring and admirable. One last question for you. Someone's listening today, they want to sell their company in 3 to 5 years and believe business is probably in pretty good shape. What's the first question you would ask to determine whether they're actually maximizing its value or quietly leaving millions of dollars on the table?
There is not a golden question. The first question I ask is, tell me about your company. What are your goals and objectives? What's your revenue? What's your EBITDA? How many employees do you have? What do you want out of the future? And we have discourse. And we just have questions. If some people see me wearing a Socrates shirt because I believe in the Socratic method, I don't tell people. I ask, and through those questions, we go on a journey together, a journey of discovery of what they can be. I can't tell them what they can be, but they can discover what they can be, and that is really critical. I mean, folks, this is my wine room. This is my hideout that I have. My wife built it for me when we moved here, built me a gym, and it's nice. But it's also, where I come for seclusion with a glass of wine.
So you can drink and work out at the same time.
I can drink and work out at the same time.
Well, listen, David, thank you for joining us. You've been a fantastic guest. Your wealth of knowledge and your insights are tremendously valuable.
I appreciate that.
When companies are looking to sell, long before they do that, they need to be maximizing their value. The strong valuations created through profitable growth, accountability, capable management teams, financial visibility, disciplined sales and marketing, and an organization that can adapt without depending on one person to solve every problem.
You're right. I really encourage anybody who listens to me, you can get a hold of us at dsbexitstrategy.com. There's a thing that says, let's talk. If you want to talk to me one-on-one, cost you nothing. And you can also take a look at our people, unbelievable staff. They're not old people like me.
Well, they may not have all the wisdom that you bring to the table either, but I'm sure they're fantastic and excellent at what they do. David, thank you again. You stole my last question, which is how do people get hold of you? So I guess we're finished up, but this has been a wonderful conversation. Appreciate you joining us, and I appreciate everyone in the audience for taking the time to watch and listen.
Hey, thanks a lot, Dan. Take care.
Thanks, David Boim. Thank you. This has been the SmartMAI Consulting Edge Podcast, and I'm Dan Mulberry. Thank you.